What you are about to hear is not fiction. It is not a movie trailer. It is not a hypothetical war game cooked up in some think tank basement. This is real. This is happening right now. And by the time you finish watching this video, the map of the Middle East may never look the same again. It is February 28th, 2026. The sun is still high in the sky over the Persian Gulf. And the world is watching. In real time, in broad daylight, with nowhere to look away. As two of the most powerful military forces on the planet go head-to-head with the Islamic Republic of Iran in what could be the opening chapter of the most catastrophic regional war in modern history. No darkness to hide in, no shadows to soften the blow. Just raw, unfiltered chaos unfolding under a blazing afternoon sun for every camera, every journalist, and every terrified civilian to witness. But let me take you inside what is happening. Because this is the story the whole world is talking about. Just hours ago, the United States and Israel launched a strike on Iranian soil so massive, so coordinated, and so devastating that it sent shockwaves through every government on Earth. This was not a targeted assassination. This was not a single facility taken out in the dead of night. This was a full-scale military operation, waves upon waves of American and Israeli jets hammering nuclear facilities, IRGC command centers, and ballistic missile production complexes across Tehran, Isfahan, and Qom. The notorious Kojir missile complex, gone. IRGC leadership positions, targeted. Israeli officials confirmed what many feared and few dared to say out loud. Several senior regime figures have been eliminated. So Tel Aviv calls it a preemptive operation to neutralize an existential threat. Tehran calls it an act of war. And frankly, both of them are right. The smoke columns rising from these sites in broad daylight are so massive they are visible on satellite imagery being refreshed every few minutes. There is no hiding this. There is no spinning this. The strikes happened. They were real. And now comes the part that should terrify every single person paying attention. Iran is firing back. Right now, in the full, unforgiving light of day. Revolutionary Guard commanders have given their response an official name, Operation Truthful Promise 4. And they are not being subtle about it. Waves of ballistic missiles and attack drones are already cutting through clear blue skies toward Israel's northern cities. Iron Dome interception systems are working overtime. The smoke trails and mid-air explosions captured live by dozens of cameras on the ground. I streamed instantly to millions of people around the world. This is not happening in the shadows. Iran is not sneaking these launches through the cover of darkness. They want every single person on Earth to see every single launch. That is the point. That is the message. At the same time, on multiple fronts across the Gulf, explosions have rocked Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, Al Dhafra in the UAE, the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, American installations in Kuwait, and military sites in Jordan. Daytime strikes mean bystanders are filming, journalists are broadcasting live, and the psychological impact is multiplied in ways a nighttime attack simply cannot replicate. Videos are flooding social media right now, showing interceptor missiles blazing against a bright blue sky. Crowds in Gulf cities staring upward at smoke rising from bases they have lived beside for years. And, most alarming, at least one confirmed direct hit on a naval facility, captured on camera in stunning, terrible detail. And then, a senior IRGC commander stepped in front of a camera on state television and said something that made the entire world go cold. "We have only used our scrap missiles so far. What comes next will be unforeseen. Now here is what you need to understand about why this is happening. Because none of this came out of nowhere. Cast your mind back to the failed Geneva nuclear talks just weeks ago. The United States sat across the table from Iran and laid out its demands. Destroy key enrichment facilities like Fordo and Natanz, hand over the stockpile of highly enriched uranium, and accept a permanent no-sunset deal with no expiration date and no renegotiation. Tehran refused, flatly, completely, without hesitation. And you have to understand the impossible position the regime was in. Already hemorrhaging legitimacy at home, already facing months of protests in the streets over economic collapse and political repression. Already watching its population lose faith in the Islamic Republic day by day. Accepting those terms would have been political suicide. So the talks died, and the bombs came. President Donald Trump did not waste a single moment. He appeared on Truth Social in a video address, calm, direct, and unmistakably forceful. And he declared major combat operations officially underway under the name Operation Epic Fury. The objectives were laid out clearly: dismantle Iran's ballistic missile arsenal, permanently halt its nuclear program, and ensure it never threatens the region again. And then he said something extraordinary, something no sitting American president has ever said quite so directly. He looked into the camera and told the Iranian people, "The hour of your freedom is at hand. I'll take over your government." Those 11 words are now being broadcast on every major news channel on Earth and whispered in every Iranian household that still has an internet connection. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi sat down for a live interview with NBC News, a remarkable move in the middle of an active military exchange, and delivered a message carefully calibrated for a global audience. Iran has every right to defend itself, he said, and the Supreme Leader and the President are alive, safe, and fully in command from secure locations. Iran is hitting military targets only, not civilians. And if the United States and Israel stop their attacks, Tehran is prepared to talk. But regime change? He was emphatic. Mission impossible. This is Iran's asymmetric warfare doctrine operating at peak performance. Overwhelm the defenses with sheer volume. Stage every launch in broad daylight for maximum global visibility. Keep the enemy scrambling on multiple fronts simultaneously, and always, always, leave a diplomatic exit door slightly cracked open. It is a strategy that has kept this regime alive and relevant for decades, against seemingly impossible odds. And right now, it is being executed at a scale and a brazenness that even seasoned analysts are struggling to process. The wider region is already feeling the tremors, and the tremors are getting worse. Across the so-called axis of resistance, Iran's proxy network is mobilizing. Iraqi militias, including the feared Kataib Hezbollah, have issued explicit threats of a grinding war of attrition against American forces and warned Washington directly against using Kurdish territory as a launchpad for further operations. Hezbollah in Lebanon, already one of the most heavily armed non-state actors in the world, is on full alert. The Houthis in Yemen, battle-hardened, motivated, and deeply connected to Tehran, are watching and waiting for the signal to open yet another front. The architecture of regional deterrence that has held, barely, for years is cracking in real time. The human cost is already devastating and climbing. Iranian reports describe civilian casualties, including a gut-wrenching account of dozens of victims at a girls' school struck in southern Iran. Here's the wreckage photographed in full afternoon daylight and spreading across every platform within minutes. Those images are doing exactly what Iran needs them to do: fueling outrage, hardening resolve, and making every diplomatic conversation in Geneva or New York just a little bit harder. In Israel, families abandoned restaurants, offices, and schools mid-afternoon as sirens wailed across northern cities. In the Gulf, residents near U.S. bases are watching columns of smoke rise against blue skies and wondering how close the next missile lands. The global economy is not waiting to find out how this ends. Oil prices are already spiking in ways that should alarm every government that runs on imported energy. The nightmare scenario: Iranian interference with or full closure of the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows every single day, is no longer a theoretical exercise, or it is a live possibility being priced into markets right now. Iran has hinted at mines, naval fast boats, and coordinated harassment campaigns. If those threats become reality before the sun sets today, the economic shockwaves will hit London, Tokyo, and New York before morning. The international response is frantic and largely powerless. Gulf states hosting American bases are publicly condemning Iran's strikes while privately watching their own skies fill with intercept trails. And the UN Security Council is convening an emergency session that everyone expects to accomplish nothing concrete. European leaders are calling for restraint with the desperate energy of people who know they are not being listened to. Australia has told its citizens to leave the region immediately. Russia and China are watching carefully, saying little, and calculating everything. Inside Iran, the picture is deeply complicated and deeply human. And there is panic on the streets as ordinary people try to understand what is falling from the sky above them. There is grief for the victims already counted, and the many more yet to be tallied. There is genuine burning anger at a regime that spent decades and billions building military power while letting the economy crumble, and still could not prevent this. And somewhere beneath all of that, among the protest movements and dissidents who have risked everything for years to push for change, there is a flicker of something dangerous and fragile: hope. The regime knows it. That is why the crackdowns are already intensifying, even as missiles are still in the air. Here is the brutal truth that no one in any government wants to say out loud. This was always going to come to this. The question was never whether this confrontation would happen. It was when and how big. Trump and Netanyahu have placed an enormous bet that these strikes will cripple Iran's capabilities, shatter its regional influence, and perhaps ignite the internal collapse that analysts have been predicting for years. But history is not kind to that bet. External military strikes on authoritarian regimes have a stubborn track record of doing the opposite, unifying populations around governments they despise, hardening resistance, and stretching conflicts across borders through proxies until the original objectives become impossible to even remember. The airspace over Iran, Israel, Jordan, and large parts of the Gulf is closed. Civilian flights are grounded on sun-baked tarmacs, passengers watching smoke rise in the distance through terminal windows. The next 48 to 72 hours will determine whether this follows the familiar pattern: a devastating exchange, a face-saving off-ramp, a fragile return to cold hostility, or whether this is the moment that pattern finally breaks, and something far larger and far harder to stop takes its place. Every ordinary person caught in the middle of this. The family abandoning their lunch in Tel Aviv as sirens wail, the Iranian mother pulling her children off a school bus as explosions shake the city, the Gulf expat watching smoke rise from the base visible from their office window, is living the consequences of decisions made in rooms they will never enter, by people who will never face what they are facing today. That is the oldest and most bitter truth of every war ever fought. And the Middle East that exists after today will not be the Middle East that existed this morning. That much, at least, is certain. Stay with me. I will be back with updates as this develops. Because this story is moving faster than anyone can keep up with alone. And you deserve real analysis, not just breathless headlines. What do you think happens next? Does this pull back from the brink? Or does it spiral into something the region cannot come back from? Tell me in the comments. Or hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now so you do not miss a single update. Your support is what keeps this channel going when the world needs it most. Stay safe, stay sharp, and stay tuned.